I've created this video series to help you be able to cope more effectively by understanding your unique temperament, as well as the temperaments of your children, of your ex, of those around you. And so there are 5 videos in this series. This introductory video that helps you understand what temperament is in and of itself and how it affects where you are right now. And then in the next video, I introduce the 4 types and help you begin to understand a little bit about what each of the types is. And then in the 3rd video in this series, I help you understand what divorce looks like from a C.O.R.E lens. And then in the 4th video, we talk about how to successfully divorce and deal with heartbreak and recover from heartbreak through a C.O.R.E lens and understanding your temperament. And then the last one is to really understand some of the unique strengths and challenges that come with each of the core temperament types and what that means for where you are in your life right now. So what is the core temperament model? Chances are pretty good that you've never heard of this before. I have always been really interested in personality. It's one of the things that drew me to this field of study in the first place. And across the years that I had worked with people, I had never come across a model that was really consistent with what I saw with the people that I worked with day in and day out. Or the models were so detail-oriented and so thorough that they weren't very user-friendly for O's and R's, and you'll understand what those are in a little bit, but user-friendly for O's and R's, which is about half the population. And so several years ago now, more than a decade ago now, I decided to begin to collect data on my own. And I spent about 3 years collecting data on personality and temperament, and then about 1.5 years analyzing it. And the core temperament model is what came out of that. And then it took me quite a few years to get everything written up, and last year the book was just published and became a #1 bestseller on Amazon. And if you want to learn more about temperament, and then I'd encourage you to click on the link below and go and check out the book, Unlock Your Core Potential, What You Can and Can't Change About Personality. What is temperament and how does that differ from personality? Temperament has been studied for decades and been shown to not change. And when you're in the business of trying to help people change, understanding things that are not changeable is really useful. And when you're in a situation like you're in right now, where you're trying to recover from heartache, it's really important to know how to be able to navigate this landscape right now, some of the unique challenges that your temperament and your personality create for you, and how to utilize the natural strengths, the way that your brain naturally works, uniquely from other people, and how to utilize those strengths in order to move forward and to begin to thrive again in your life. So one of the things that is really important to understand is that temperament is uniquely different than personality. Every research has shown there are 9 temperament variables that infants come into life high or low on. And those 9 variables predictably coalesce into patterns that form the 4 different temperament types. And so temperament is the underlying reason or reasons why we do the things that we do and why we don't do the things that we don't do. And that is unique from how we generally conceptualize temperament, or how we generally conceptualize personality. There are lots of things in our lives that we can change. We can absolutely change our behavior. We can change how we interpret things. But this underlying motive of why we do what we do is an unchangeable part of who you are. And you can hit your head against that wall as hard or as frequently as you want, and it is not going to change. And I'm not talking about like, am I motivated to make $1 million? Or am I motivated to get a 6-pack? Or to be able to run a marathon or whatever? This is even deeper than that. C's would be motivated to make money for different reasons than R's would be motivated to make money. And O's would be motivated. The reason why an O would want a 6-pack would be different than the reason why an E would want a 6-pack. And so temperament is the basic fundamental motivation that drives almost everything that we as human beings do. And it is an unchangeable part or an unchangeable aspect of who you are. Going through divorce can make you feel like you don't even know yourself anymore. You're so used to playing a role that you've played maybe for decades, at least probably for years. And so when you're no longer playing that role, it can really make you question who you are. And you can start feeling like you don't even know yourself, and you're reacting to things in ways that maybe you've not reacted to things in the past. It can really make you question a lot of very fundamental things that you thought you knew about yourself. And as your world gets rocked like this, and you're no longer defined necessarily by the things that you were doing day in and day out before, it can be really difficult. And it can be really difficult and feel super overwhelming just to get your feet back under you again. And here's the silver lining. It might not feel like there are a lot of silver linings in your life right now, but this is actually a perfect crossroads in your life to really learn about you. And you may think that you already know about yourself, but I guarantee that as you learn about your temperament, and then your primary temperament, your secondary temperament, we'll talk more about that. As you learn about yourself, it will dramatically increase your ability and the power that you have, the control that you have to be able to cope well with this moment in your life right now. It's a perfect time to learn about your strengths, what you uniquely bring to the table. There are some really important things that every single temperament uniquely brings to the table. And when you learn about that, if you're not bringing, if you're a C and you're trying to act like an R, you're never going to be able to be as an effective R as you are as a C. And you may have thought all of this time, and your ex may have thought that you should have been thinking a certain way or bringing certain things to the table. This is a perfect time to learn what your unique strengths are, what some of the challenges of your temperament, unalterable challenges of your temperament are, and to begin to learn what makes you uniquely you and what you uniquely have to offer those around you and humanity at large. Let's talk for just a minute about self-concept. You may or may not have heard of the term of self-concept. It's related to self-esteem. I'm sure you've heard of self-esteem. And typically when we talk about self-esteem, we talk about this sort of overall global feeling. How do you feel about yourself in general? Well, the research has identified this concept of self-concept that is actually typically a little more helpful in terms of understanding the way that we feel about ourselves. And self-concept is defined as my perceptions of others' perceptions of me. What is it that I think others think of me? And at first blush, that may sound like not a very healthy thing, but it's actually a really important thing that enables us to be the social creatures that we are, that enables us to be able to live together in greater harmony, because we as human beings should healthfully care about those around us and about the way that we're affecting those around us and the way that those around us are affecting us. And so self-concept isn't what I think of me. It isn't even what you think of me. It's what I think you think of me. And as your identity gets rocked as you go through divorce or heartbreak, it can really kind of destabilize the self-concept. And all of a sudden, you go from thinking that, people at church thought that you were a certain way, and they looked at your family a certain way, and people at work looked at you a certain way, and people at the school looked at you a certain way. And all of a sudden, you can start to feel really insecure about, what are they thinking of me? And especially if you were the one that finally made the decision to end things, people around you obviously don't understand everything that's gone on or why you've made the decisions that you've made. And so it can frequently feel, even from people close to you, it can frequently feel like you're being harshly judged and like people are thinking poorly of you for ruining your family or ending your marriage or causing all these problems for your kids. And that's because they don't know. One, chances are that you're probably thinking that they're thinking worse than they actually are. And two, they have no idea what's been going on behind closed doors. So often in the months and years leading up to a divorce or the breakup, we do everything we can to try to protect our relationship and try to protect our ex, because we don't want people to think poorly of them. We don't want people to think poorly of us because we're in this dysfunctional place in our lives. And so frequently we spend a lot of time and energy protecting the other person from the things that are going on. And then all of a sudden, when you finally make the decision that I'm getting out of this unhealthy place, then all of a sudden people are like, what do you mean? I thought things were fine. And so that can be a really difficult part, and it can kind of rock your self-concept and take a little bit of time. And again, understanding your personality and your temperament well can really help you have a much more accurate self-concept and help you feel much better about yourself as a result. There's a really interesting finding from the research that I want to share with you. Research shows that depression is really high immediately following divorce. Then it decreases. Unfortunately, it then reappears again because people have yet to put in the work and to do the things necessary to heal and to understand what is required to really thrive and to become healthy and happy in this new phase of their lives. And there's very little that can be done or that can be more helpful to help you through this process than understanding who you are at your core. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what temperament is and what you can and can't do about it. Let's take a little bit deeper dive into understanding who you are at your core. The first thing is to understand what is changeable and what is not changeable. There has been a decades-long debate now, more than half a century, about which is more important, which is more influential in our lives, nature or nurture. Are our genetics and our biological influences, the biological influences in our lives, more predictive in who we are and what we become, or are the environmental factors more powerful and more influential in determining who we are and what we become? Obviously, the fact is that it's a little bit of both. Both nature and nurture are really powerful influencers in our lives, and C.O.R.E can actually really help you understand how these two things come together to inform and even determine who you are. So temperament is the nature part of the equation. You come into life with your temperament. You are a C.O.R.E when you come into life. And that is unchangeable. It's not broken and it's not changeable. And it influences how you then interface with your environment. So interestingly, research shows that about 80% of the brain gets wired by age 3. And when we're first born, there are hardly any neural pathways connecting the billions of neurons that exist in an infant's brain when she or he is first born, which is why an infant cannot intentionally move anything. Any of you that have had children, you know an infant comes out and about all that they can intentionally move are their eyes. And that's because those neural pathways haven't been formed yet. And literally how our brains get wired depends on what happens between an infant and his or her caregivers. That determines literally how those neurological neurons get wired together to create the neurological pathways. And so you have the nature, you have the temperament of the infant. And then you have the way that that temperament interfaces with the environment, and that determines how the brain gets wired. And so I believe that what personality ends up being is this dynamic interplay between the unchangeable nature, temperament part of the infant and the environmental factors of attachment, how responsive the parents are, the caregivers are. And so then you end up with this dynamic interplay between nature and nurture. I've had the opportunity to work with several members of the same family across the years, and I see a really interesting thing play out. Frequently, you'll have different members of the family will have different primary temperaments, different primary core types, and then they'll share a secondary type. I believe that frequently that secondary type, so you might be a CO or a CR or a CE, and what that secondary type is and ends up being frequently will be shared among the family members, and a family will have a culture. I have a C child, I have an O child, I have an R child, and I have an E child. But every single one of them, I believe, has O-ness somewhere in there, because the culture of our family is an O culture. And I understand that these things don't mean a whole lot to you yet, but they will. And so your personality ends up being this combination of both your temperament and your nurture, your environmental influences that then combine or coalesce to determine who you are. Why does it matter if you understand what your core type is? Why does it matter if you understand your temperament and your personality? Well, it matters because you can't change it. It secondarily matters because, like I mentioned before, there are unique things that you need to be bringing to those around you. And if you're not doing that, you're going to feel less competent. You're going to feel less effective in the way that you live your life. And you're going to have a hard time feeling good about yourself because you're going to feel like a square peg in a round hole. So by understanding your temperament, you can learn how to capitalize on your strengths. You can learn how to capitalize on who you are. And you can learn how to manage the challenges that predictably come with temperament. One temperament type is not better than another. The way that you are is not broken. And there's kind of an interesting thing that I see with people. When somebody first learns what their primary personality or temperament is, almost everybody wishes that they were something else. When you find out that you're an O, you'll be like, man, I wanted to be an R. Or I wanted to be, or if you're a C, you might think, man, I really wanted to be an O. And it's really consistent with most people R's are the exception. When R's find out that they're R's, they're typically glad that they're R's. But with C's, O's, and E's, there's this initial like, gosh, I wish that that's not what I was. And the reason why that's the case, I believe, is because we're so familiar with the challenges of being us that part of our brain is like, I wish I were different. And so one of the great benefits and I think blessings of learning about you and your personality and your temperament is learning to value who you are. No one temperament type is better than the other. The fact is that society would be way worse off if we didn't have the benefits and the strengths that come with every single one of the temperaments in our society. What makes this model different from any other model out there is the fact that it really incorporates both the changeable and unchangeable parts of yourself, the message and the understanding, helping you understand the strengths that you uniquely bring to the table, and then really learning. We have so many resources to teach you how to be an effective and healthy as an E, how to thrive as a C. And you're not going to get that anywhere else. And you can go get lots of information, but the resources we have to be able to help you learn and then to really help you be able to incorporate this information into your life and into your relationships is unique and something that you're not going to find anywhere else. My hope is that you're at a point in this journey right now and that the pain that you're in right now, I'm not glad that you're in pain, but unfortunately, we as human beings are motivated by pain. And my hope is that you allow the pain and the discomfort that you're in right now to motivate you to really cope well with this moment in your life. Because you can. It is possible to navigate this moment in your life effectively. And my hope is that you're ready to really learn about you, to really learn about your personality, about your temperament, and to really learn how to be a healthy you. You have kind of an important choice here. You can follow the typical trend that most people follow when they're in your position right now, which is to struggle and to really be in pain. And then to start to feel a little bit better just because of time. And then if you don't do anything, then it's going to get bad again and it's going to get worse again. You can do that and you can be like everybody else, or you can choose to be different. You can choose to leverage this moment in your life. You can choose to take control of your life, of your future, of your children, and you can do something to really change the normal developmental trajectory so that you can thrive and get through this moment in your life effectively and end up better off than you were. So what I would love to invite you to do, first off, please click on the link below, take the assessment, find out what your primary and secondary types are. Then, if you want to keep learning, and I hope you want to keep learning, click on this next video to learn more about what each of the 4 types look like.